Okay, Aztec dancers, we're back with part 2 of the instructional video for your dream catcher. I have a sample here that I did to show you, and as you can tell, this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 point star, right? This is what I am opting to use for the spider web that is going to be here in the center. I opted to use these beads, so I use 1, 2, 3 beads. And again, the beads is where the negative nightmares or negative dreams get captured. And you should make sure that you do expose your dream catchers to the sun so that those get evaporated and never reach you, okay? And the feathers, the dangling feathers, are the ones that are going to allow your dreams, your good positive dreams, to reach you, okay? So this is how this dream catcher looks, and you have this loop on top so that you can then hang it near to the area where you sleep. And this is another smaller dream catcher that I made, and let's see how many points does this star have, or this spider web have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This one has 7. So something very important is that you do need to measure out the length before you start, so that the length between one strand of thread and another is equally spaced. So do take time to do that before you begin your project. And the length is going to be based on how many points you want your web to have, or your star in the center, right, to have. Do you want it to have 7 points? Do you want it to have 6, 5? So depending on the length of your web depending on the points that your web is going to have, then that's how long you need to measure. But the length between one point and the other do have to be pretty much the same length. It could be off by slightly bits of an inch, but pretty much the same length, okay? So that your work is symmetrical. All right, let's get started. So you've already decorated your hoop, right? We've already done this part. What I went ahead and did to give you advice, and I don't necessarily recommend this, that you do this all the time, but you might want to do it for your first dream catcher, is I went ahead and used a protractor. I think that's what this is called, or a ruler. You can go ahead and use a ruler. And I measured the distance, right? I want this dream catcher to have 8 points in its star or its web that is in the center. So I went ahead and measured how long of a strand I would need, and I came up with 3 1/4 of an inch. So from here to here to this area is 3/4, and I just had to add 1/4 of an inch more. And I went ahead and I marked it with a pen. Again, you don't want to do this all the time. You don't want to have markings, pen markings on your dream catcher. But for your very first one, if you feel insecure about always having each strand be the same length, then I recommend that. Initially, what I had used was the length of my index finger. So, but as you can tell, the length of my index finger is not quite 3 1/4 inch in length. Okay, so that's how I figured, okay, I better use a ruler. Okay, the length from here to here is longer than the length of my index finger. Next, in order for you to get started, you need to make sure that your thread is all out, right? That it doesn't have any knots. So when you undo your thread, make sure there are no knots. And now you want to thread it into the needle. I got you guys needles that are large and have a big hole, so it shouldn't be a problem. But again, when you're going to be inserting the beads, it's going to be a problem, because this needle is not going to go through the hole of these small beads. So you're going to have to either do it manually without a needle, or find a smaller needle, and then that needle should be able to go through your the small hole of your smallest beads. Okay? All right, let's get started. your needle is threaded and your thread does not have any knots, and we're ready to start. I'm choosing to work towards my right hand side. Okay, so this is where I placed my knot. So my wax thread is to the left side of this knot here, and again I went ahead and I marked where my thread is going to loop the hoop. And so let's get started. So this is where I marked, and this is where I want to loop the thread. I stick my hand through the middle of the hoop, and then I want to bring my needle out from on top of the thread because I want to secure it in place. So I bring the entire thread out, and as you can see, you're able to kind of sort of cover the marking with pen. But again, if you're going to do more of these, I would say try not to mark them, or don't mark them in such a noticeable way. I think most people that do dream catchers just kind of eye it and make sure that its strand is visually equal in size or length. So again, I'm securing my dream catcher, and I'm bringing the needle from the top, and I'm pulling the thread, making sure that it doesn't knot up. And I'm pulling tightly, and that is what's causing for my thread not to fall apart. And whenever I place my thread on top of the hoop, I want to try and secure it in place with my index finger. And as you can see, you do have to watch for knotting. Okay, so you see what's happening here, right? And I'm going to go ahead and videotape myself doing this all around, so creating that full circle, so that you can understand what the pattern of your movements, the step mechanics, what the step mechanics is for the dream catcher. So far I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'll come back to my starting point. And again, I'm trying as best as possible to cover the markings, the pen markings that I did for aesthetics. You want it to not have those markings there to draw attention away from the beauty of your work. And then I come to my starting point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I guess it's just 7. It's not an 8-point star, it's a 7-point star. And then here, I am going to be careful to loop it around the knot that I initially created and bring it out on the other side. And when you don't hold your thread in place, then that's kind of something that can happen, right? Oh, you know what? I'm going to undo it because I didn't loop it around the hoop here. So sometimes you are going to have to undo your work. And it's okay. See, I only knotted or looped it around the thread and not the hoop. So I have to go back and loop around the hoop. This is what I mean. Okay? Battery? Okay. Oh my goodness. My son is talking to me. He's helping me to videotape. That's all kind of got me distracted. So here we go. Pause. Alright, so as you can see, we've gotten this point. And I think it's taken us less than 10 minutes, right? Because we were kind of going slow. But once you get this pattern, this is what you're going to be repeating over and over. This is the pattern you repeat over and over. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the excess little strand that we don't need. And so we've completed one full circle. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 point star or 7 point spider web, right? Now you're going to create an inner circle that is going to have the same type of motions. This time around, you need to be mindful of the middle section of the length of your thread strand, okay? So you want to, and the first one is going to be kind of awkward. This is the only one that's going to be a bit awkward. So again, you're pulling your thread, right? We did the same motion of movement, and we want to be able to position this in the center. And you're going to just have to kind of, eye it, and be careful that your thread doesn't slide to a position that is not the center position, okay? And again, pull hard on it so that it stays there. I like to hang on to it. And again, you want to secure this in the center area. So this kind of looks like it's the center for me, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it there, and then I'm going to keep moving. And again, being mindful to position it. I pull hard on it once I believe I have it in the center area. Okay? And then again, continue the process all around, and you're going to create several circles in this manner. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and pause the video so that it doesn't get so long. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just about completed with my second circle, right? The outer layer is here, and then here I create an inner layer, right? It's actually not a circle, it's an inner layer. So as I'm about done, now I have to come here to the beginning of my second layer, and I'm going to need to insert my needle through here. Again, it's the same exact pattern we've been doing, same exact motion, and now this layer I am going to be pulling and securing my thread in the middle, right? This strand is about the same strand length as this strand, and I continue now with my third layer, my third inner layer. And again, as you can see, I'm going to try and position this in the center. The nice thing is that you can use the top to match with the inner. And I pull on it so that it's nice and tight. And again, I continue my work. So again, have positive thoughts. This is a very repetitive type of work. You're able to, it can be therapeutic. You're able to think about things once you have the movement of your hands down, once you have the pattern down. Again, I'm matching this with this, and then I'm pulling hard on it, and I'm continuing the work. So you're going to do this until you get to the very center of your dream catcher. Okay? So as you can see, I'm pulling where I think it's the center, and the center matches with this center. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and pause and continue the video a bit later. Alright, so I just got ready to insert the first bead, And like I said, this needle is too thick to go through these beads. So you can find a thinner bead, a thinner needle, or you can use a bead of your own that has a larger hole that can, where the needle can go through the hole. But I'm sticking with the needle, with the beads that I put in the materials. The only thing that I did is I clipped the tip of this in a slanted position so that the thinner strand of threads could go through the bead, and that worked for me. So as you can see, I only did this. Whereas the thread was like that, where all the threads needed to go through the bead initially, what I did is I just clipped it so that it would be diagonal, and then the tip of this thread would be thinner, and that's what allowed me to get my bead inside. Okay, inside the thread, which is exactly where I wanted. Then I get the bead in here, right? It's already here, and I just am going to continue the work and the pattern of threading this weave as I was doing before. So now I'm using my regular size needle again. And I suppose if you went ahead and found a thinner size needle, you can continue working with that if it works for you. Okay? And I'm continuing the pattern again. As you work on your inner layers, it's a little bit trickier to kind of secure things in place, but just remember that it's manageable. You can undo your work and perfect it. Like if you did not do this, if you did not center it, you can undo your work and go ahead and center it again. Okay? And so my bead is going to, travel from one position to another, but that's fine. What I want is to have a bead to be part of my dream catcher. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and pause. Okay, so as you can see, I am just about done. I have come to the innermost layer that I can do in the center. I could probably do one more, but I'm going to choose to stop here. So again, I'm going to pull, and I'm going to create one of those knots where I create a circle and pull out through the inner circle, right? It's a circle, and you're coming in through the inner circle, and I'm going to secure this as closely as possible to my work, and I'm going to clip it there. I suppose I could have done another knot, but I don't want it to be too noticeable. And then I think I'm going to choose for this side to be the front side of my dream catcher, but it doesn't matter. They're both just the same. And as you can see, this second layer is the only one that is going to be a bit odd in your dream catcher. This is the only place where you're going to be like, wait, something's odd here. But everywhere else should be nice, right? Again, the trick is to securing your thread at the center of your larger layer. So say it kind of look like a triangle, right? So you're wanting to always secure your thread at the middle of the bottom of the triangle. And you can see sometimes you're going to be a bit off, or maybe when you pull, sometimes you're not going to pull exactly the same, have the same pull as you did on the last one. So it's going to cause for your work to be slightly off. But again, practice makes you better. So be positive, be patient, solve any problems that you need to solve while you're working with this. Some of my problems were like, I like to hold on to every spot that I've secured my thread on before I go on and move to the next section. So when it got to over here, my fingers weren't long enough to secure. So what I began to do was I would lay down my dream catcher flat and secure it like that, and continue the threading and knotting of of my thread. I also at some point needed to pull the needle with my lips. That's something that worked for me. That's one way that I would solve a problem when it just got too tight and too small of a place. So again, figure it out. This is something therapeutic, and again, your dream catcher is a protected item. I will pause here. Alright, so now we're gonna get ready to put the feathers, the dangling feathers from the dream catcher. As you know, it's very likely you had some leftover leather lace, so I'm gonna take a piece of that that I will then position in this manner, right at the very tip bottom of it, so that I can dangle my feathers from it. The other thing is, you should clip the tip of your leather lace in a diagonal position, in a diagonal way. That makes it easier to insert your beads through these tips. Okay? So now, as you have seen, I have inserted my wooden beads onto the leather string, and I have needed to make the tips even thinner in order to do that. As you can see, this is kind of what I had recommended, but I went ahead and cut the tips even thinner because the hole in the wood bead was much smaller, and I couldn't get it through when it was this thick, so I went ahead and cut it and made it thinner. Now what I want to do is I want to get the feather tips, right, this tip of my feathers, to go through the wooden bead, and I'm gonna use 2 feathers, not just one, because I like the way they look. So what I do is I bring down my wooden bead and I insert the feathers onto there, and I try to push them as best as I can through the wooden bead. And as you can see, you can see the tip of the feather showing here, and I think that should be snug enough so that they're not gonna fall. Okay, and I do the same with this other side. And I might want to make this tip even thinner, so I can actually pull out some of the feather fuss, right? The feather material, so that it's just this area, this very thin part of the feather that I'm trying to push into the bead. And so again, I use this amount of leather dangling, and then I try my best to get the tip of the feathers in there. So some tip of feathers is thinner than others. You're just gonna have to kind of play with it, struggle with it, but do